Welcome to the Kratom Advocacy Podcast. My name is Lawrence, and today we're having a conversation with Mr. Todd Underwood. Todd is the CEO of MitWellness, which is an online Kratom, Cava, and holistic health company. Mr. Underwood, it's a pleasure to have you on today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Lawrence. Looking forward to it.
So let's get started on your background, maybe how you got where you got, because from what I've read, MitWellness is a very successful company. I just wanted to know how does one get involved in selling Kratom and selling Cava?
Well, my success is still to be debated, but I don't think anybody plans on getting into botanicals. It just kind of happens. Long story short, I was in the firearms vertical, had a heart attack and quadruple bypass, and had a lot of health issues, and started looking into plant remedies and plant medicine. Back in 2019, found Kratom. It was extremely impactful in my life. And I've always kind of had the viewpoint that if you can have fun, make money, and make a difference in people's lives simultaneously, that's probably a pretty good venture to get involved in. And my story isn't unique. When you talk to a lot of the other larger manufacturers, they all have a similar story about how Kratom impacted their lives, and that's why they turned it into a business. I haven't met anybody that looked at Kratom as a product and said, "Yeah, that's the direction we want to go." Just from a pure business standpoint, there's a lot easier ways to make money if you're so inclined.
And what are some of your most distinguished products, and why are they so distinguished?
But one of our, by far our bestseller is what we call the M300. Back in 2019, the first Kratom company I launched, not really understanding the Kratom market or being that in tune with what was going on, and having more of a CBD background. On the CBD side of things, everything is in a bottle with a dropper. So when we launched the first product, it was a 5, 15, and 30 ml product with droppers in there, and that's what we launched. And when we started MitWellness, that was kind of the cornerstone of our product offerings. We always viewed Kratom to be more of an item where if you take it appropriately and you can measure your exact serving precisely, you don't really need a whole lot to achieve the goal. So the M300 is 300 milligrams in a 10 milliliter bottle. It has a dropper in there. So the consumers can grab exactly 30 milligrams at a time and pace themselves throughout the day. So that is by far our best-selling product.
And your attention to detail, your scrupulousness when it comes to your products apparently has led to you being certified by the AKA. Can you describe that process? I've heard plenty of people say it's a pain in the ass. Others say it's not so bad. How much did it cost? What does it take to be an AKA certified vendor?
Well, let's go over a couple different things. When we first started manufacturing botanicals, we kind of had a viewpoint of, you walk into a typical vape shop, and that's where we saw the product being, and there was kind of an arms race. You can make the strongest, the most outrageous. And when we first started manufacturing products, we kind of, saw ourselves falling in that footsteps. Started looking at some of the other larger manufacturers, how do they do business, and kind of a peer-to-peer encouragement scenario where I saw how they were bringing their products to market. And very early on, we made the decision, instead of being the most outrageous or the strongest, our goal turned into being the most transparent, the most properly labeled, the most compliant. And we met Robert Durkin, our FDA compliance attorney. And, obviously through the American Shaman Association, they have a GMP program. We basically looked at that as a starting point of our compliance. When you say how much does it cost, it's an ongoing cost. There's no finish line. We are registered with the FDA as a dietary supplement manufacturing company. We are GMP certified through the AKA, but our GMP certification is extended much further than just AKA guidelines. Title 111, 117, and Duche, there's a lot of different laws that come into play. And especially depending on what state you live in or what state you're operating out of, there's a lot of different laws on a state level that can impact your manufacturing and how you have to do things. So the ongoing cost, is tremendous. We have a full-time GMP compliance officer. We have a dedicated compliance staff and quality control, and those are extensions of GMP compliance. So it's, I don't know what it costs. I know it's quite costly, and the expenses, the more you rise in this industry and the more different products you offer, and especially given the fact that we're vertically integrated, we extract in-house, we formulate in-house, we bottle in-house. So it's it's quite costly to stay ahead on compliance.
How much time do you spend assuring quality? How much time do you spend in the factory? I know that I'm not sure how many you have, but I know that you have multiple processing centers where you take care of testing and
Mhm.
experimentation, and that's pretty cool to me. I just wanted to know what that looks like on a day-to-day operational level.
We have we started off at our original facility in Blue Springs, Missouri, and that's where we started our extraction and our bottling. And we quickly outgrew that. We purchased more property in Independence, Missouri, a neighboring city. That's going to be a total of 75,000 square feet in that individual building there. MitWellness is the consumer-facing brand of this entity, but we have dedicated business paths for each unit. Mit Sciences is our extraction division. And through there, at the extraction facility, that's where we extract the alkaloids, purify the extract. And through that division, we also look at other types of tasks. We can, we can play with alkaloids. Just to be completely transparent, we have perfected a couple different ways to synthetically create 7-hydroxy. We can create
Wow.
synthetic speciosilitine. I haven't been secretive about that. I've told, Chris McCurdy, Mac Haddo, and other people involved. The fact that we can make it and we will not produce it in a product shows to our unwavering commitment to consumer safety and just basically doing what's right by the consumer. But we found it to be extremely important to have a good understanding of how those products are made. And we've also worked with a couple of different laboratories to identify different markers in the product that basically put a fingerprint on there that show that it is synthetic. So we have the extraction division, we have the bottling division, the new building, we're going to run powders and capsules and fulfillment out of there.
And can you talk about what you plan to do with this almost perfect 7-hydroxy? That's really interesting because you've kind of set yourself up as an opponent of unregulated 7-hydroxy, yet you have the ability to produce high quality, large amounts of it. What are your plans for that ability?
Right now, we have no plans of doing anything with it. Kind of a long-term goal when we started this company is we see this potentially going down a pharmaceutical route. And this is, all just, basically studying the plant and really learning the plant's characteristics, the different extraction techniques, and knowing how to separate and create the alkaloids. If we ever do decide to file an NDA or an IND, an investigational new drug, we just want to be prepared for that as far in advance as we can. We have zero intentions of making 7-hydroxy on a mass scale, producing any 7-hydroxy products, working with anybody to be part of a supply chain for any products like that. So it's, with great power comes great responsibility. We don't think that there's any safety data available right now to prove that this product is safe for human consumption, specifically given the fact that when you put it under a nuclear test, not only are you taking mitragynine and converting it into 7-hydroxy, you're creating a plethora of unknown compounds that are present in all 7-hydroxy products out there. And until the scientific community has a good understanding of what those are and how they interact with the body, I think it is just completely irresponsible to release those in the market right now.
Well, what's your vision for 7-hydroxy in the future? Do you want it to become a new drug? Because, I mean, I know people who think it should be completely legal. What do you have to say about that stance? I know people who think it should be totally outlawed. Where do you
Let me give
fall?
you, let me answer that question in two parts.
Okay.
From a political standpoint and my personal values, I think that grown adults primarily should be able to put whatever they want in their body without restrictions from the government, as long as they have an understanding of what they're doing. It's far be it from me or the government to tell you as a grown adult to make a deliberate decision on this is the best path for you. That's number one. And I think that extends to even street drugs. If somebody wants to do cocaine, that's their body, it's their choice, so long as what you do doesn't affect me. And that's where the conflict comes into play here. Uh, if 7-hydroxy didn't pose a significant risk to the greater Kratom community, I wouldn't have an opinion on it. It would be basically like anything else. I don't comment on cannabinoids or cannabis publicly because I'm not involved. It's none of my business. It's not my lane. But when you have all these companies, and they're predominantly cannabis companies, getting into 7-hydroxy, they jumped right over Kratom and went directly to the synthetics, just like they did with CBD to Delta 8 and HHC, THCO, and all those other exotic isomers. And if you have been paying attention the past 5 years and you look at how many states have banned and put heavy restrictions on the exotic isomers, California just had a sweeping set of legislation that I think pretty much all but banned CBD isolate. So I think that if anybody's not paying attention, Kratom could go down a similar path right now because of that. Now, I think 7-hydroxy in of itself could be a revolutionary new drug. It needs to be studied thoroughly. It needs to either go through a new dietary ingredient notification, or it needs to probably more appropriately file a new drug application. Because when you listen to Dr. Kirsten Smith, Dr. Chris McCurdy, Dr. Aaron Berthold, when you listen to them basically talk about how 7-hydroxy interacts identically to morphine in the human body, it's highly addictive. Now, the question is, does it do any harm? We don't know. And when you look at the existing framework the FDA has, you don't just get to throw a product on the market and then use the American population as guinea pigs to get your safety data. You have to have a reasonable assumption of safety and have clinical data to prove your product is safe for human consumption before you release it. Now, I told you earlier that we are registered with the FDA as a dietary supplement manufacturer. To extend on that, we have filed an NDIN, a new dietary ingredient notification, on our extract. We're awaiting a reply from the FDA, even though we're pretty confident what they're going to say, just like they've responded to everybody else's. But a big misconception people have is the FDA doesn't approve or decline or deny new dietary ingredients. They either respond with objection, they respond without objection, or they respond saying you had an incomplete submission. Well, the fact that we've already gone through the process and the FDA has acknowledged we have submitted a complete file, we're just, waiting on the official response with objection like everybody else has. So take that a step further with 7-hydroxy, due to the fact that it is acting just like a typical narcotic or an opioid. That's why I think it probably needs to go down a new drug path. I do think that it is going to, this is just a hunch, I do think it's probably going to be safer than most of the opioids out there. But the fact is, we don't know. And until we know, I'm going to go back to my original statement that it's just completely irresponsible to put this in smoke shops and vape shops with, no certainty of manufacturing standards or anything like that. I mean, it's just one step away before we start seeing it in gas stations right next to all the other products at the checkout. And the biggest problem we have there is now we're going to have a lot of people exposed to 7-hydroxy, not really realizing what it is. Now, when you start having a lot of adverse reporting events, which I'm sure they're going to be coming, it just raises more eyebrows at people looking at Kratom. Over the past year or two, we've kind of gotten to a point to where a lot of people are comfortable with Kratom. It's growing tremendously. I just think we're going to be shooting ourselves in the foot if we don't put a strong chokehold around this immediately.
Yeah, that's already showing up in gas stations around where I am. It's right there. It's advertised in the window. And it's just kind of strange to me that this just sort of appeared and on Facebook, you're being silenced if you're talking about Kratom, but 7-hydroxy is okay. And it's strange to me. I don't have an objection to it in theory, but when did you know anything about the history of this and when it first appeared? And I mean, you're not a 7-hydroxy vendor, but how did this all get started?
I don't think anybody can pinpoint the exact start. This is back in 2017, 2018. I remember one of my former partners, and we can discuss that later, but at that time he said that he used to be able to buy kilos of pure 7-hydroxy from China. I never saw it firsthand,
Wow.
but that was the first time I had heard about a 7-hydroxy isolate being available. So I don't know how long it goes or how far back it goes, but I know that right now there's a multitude of laboratories in the United States that are converting it right now, turning out pills left and right. So
one common criticism from the 7-hydroxy community to critics of its unregulated sale is that, well, 7-OH is just challenging kratom as a potent analgesic and pain reliever, so that's why all these vendors are upset. What do you say to that?
I say that's complete bullshit, to be quite frankly with you. Kratom has a established safety profile, been used for centuries. When the folks from 7 Ohms, and even reading an article from Supply Side East, I think Vince said something about how companies like ours were just jealous or were upset that they can make it and we can't. I mean, it's not a complex conversion. Uh, it's extremely easy to make. We could immediately start making the product and producing, we estimate 5 to 7 million tablets a month. We just choose not to. And it's hard, going to bed every night knowing that we're leaving millions of dollars on the table. But it's one of those things, and I've said this consistently to multiple people. I'm not going to produce a product and put it into commerce unless I would give it to my wife. That's kind of my own standard. If I wouldn't feel comfortable giving it to my wife, why would I sell it to you or your wife or your kids or your mother?
So you've mentioned also that you think people will be dying from 7-OH. I read in a news article somewhere. Has this happened yet to your knowledge? Would we be able to even know if it had happened?
You bring up an interesting question. Every commercially available 7-hydroxy product out there, if you test it, it has mitragynine in there. Most of the coroners, I think there's one coroner in the United States that tests for 7-hydroxy. The other thousands of coroners out there don't. So if you have an adverse event and somebody dies because of this product, they're not going to test for 7-hydroxy. They're going to test for mitragynine, and then that's going to show present. So that's going to have them focused on low levels of mitragynine having adverse events. And that's going to make things even more complicated because the safety narrative right now is uh, they have a reasonable idea of what a toxic dose of, well, hold on, back up. I don't think medicine has determined a lethal dose of regular kratom yet. I know the FDA just did a study with super speciosa on their capsules, and basically they determined that the average human is going to get sick with the amount of plant material they're ingesting, not necessarily because of the amount of kratom they're ingesting. So right now, with zero testing standards across the board for coroners, we don't know. So back to my original statement, if we don't know, how can we release this product in the market?
Okay, and can you describe your relationship with American Shaman, um, Vince Sanders, Hart, any of these prominent 7-OH vendors or conglomerates that are around right now?
I've known Vince Sanders for 25 years. I'm a Kansas City native, so is he. I worked with him 25 years ago when we were in the car business together. I'm not going to turn this into a big mudslinging contest right now.
For sure.
But I've just known him for 25 years. I came on board at CBD American Shaman in 2017 as the chief operating officer of the company. We had a couple franchises at the time. When I left or departed the company, we had over 500 franchises, I think. I'd have to go back and look at the exact numbers. But it was a wild ride and a lot of explosive growth. Uh, Due to a multitude of issues, I chose to go a completely different direction and focus solely on Kratom. I tried to get the franchises to take on Kratom at the time. They all thought it was too big of a risk. So there was no Kratom allowed in the franchise at the time when I left. We started this endeavor, and now it seems like 7-hydroxy is their number one focus. When you go around town, they have signs up all over the place. Kratom like no other. You walk into their stores, you ask them for Kratom, they immediately say, hey, we have 7-hydroxy. And then they make you sign a 2-page waiver in order to buy it.
And your relationship going forward. You mentioned that you'd be willing to debate him as well.
Absolutely.
Yes, that would be cool. Hopefully, Vince, if you're watching, we can get something worked out because we would love to have that on our show.
Yeah, I would.
So,
I would keep it
mhm.
focused strictly on the 7-hydroxy issue. No, nothing personal. Keep it 100% objective on the issue at hand.
And so, what do you think is the future of 7-hydroxy? Would you predict it's going to be banned within a certain time span, or do
I,
you think it's just? Mhm.
I know. I absolutely think it's going to get banned at a certain time. And take me out of the equation, off of the playing field, it's still going to get banned. I think if lawmakers across the board understood that this is a synthetic opioid, they are marketing it as a drug. Their CEO, Jim McNair, on camera on the news, said they see this as an alternative to opioids. 7 Ohms made drug claims in their video. Uh, when you talk to a lot of the legal experts in the field, every single one of them is absolutely shocked it's still on the market right now. So ignore my opinion, my voice on it. There are a lot of people sitting back just wondering what is going on. Why nobody is, especially from the FDA standpoint, why is nobody from the FDA enforcing this?
And states, can you name any states or any municipalities that are trying to ban them right now? Anything in the news?
I hear rumblings of different local cities, city ordinances, city councils trying to take up this issue. I haven't seen anything substantial yet. I know that technically the KCPA in Nevada and Texas and Utah, 7-hydroxy is already banned according to those laws. But
Huh.
Texas, for example, I bet there's 10,000 locations in Texas. You can go buy it right now. So I'm a little puzzled by that.
Okay. And right now, there's kind of a dispute going on between the Global Kratom Coalition and the American Kratom Association on 7 hydroxy levels in products. Can you speak to that?
It's it's a basically a difference in philosophy right now on what the best course to regulate this and protect kratom. Uh, when you look at it from the standpoint of what's more important, protecting kratom or banning 7-hydroxy or both, uh, it puts me in a precarious situation. We are an ingredient manufacturer. We are a co-packer. Uh, we have hundreds of customers that we manufacture either raw ingredients, bulk formulas, or finished goods for. And when you have that many business owners, you have a lot of different opinions. I know that a lot of our customers have been involved with the American Kratom Association for years, and we don't want to put ourselves in a position to be at odds with any of our customers. We also have customers that are listening to the Global Kratom Coalition that more fall in lines with their values. So it puts us in a tight situation where uh, we have to make the decision what's best for Mint Wellness, what's best for our company, for not only our current standings but also our future growth. So I don't like the back and forth drama. I think that we're going to waste a lot of money until we get some sort of agreement on the best path forward, especially when it comes to passing different bills in different states.
Okay. And you were recently in DC. Can you talk about why you were there and what that was like?
The American Kratom Association has summits frequently, and we all come together and discuss some of the topics. And then also that last summit corresponded with a briefing on the scientific evidence on Capitol Hill. You had Chris McCurdy, Kirsten Smith, and a few other prominent doctors basically giving testimony. We were there. The primary issue I was there for is Indonesia has uh, upped their standards quite a bit as far as what they're going to export and why, and the different particle sizes and all these other standards they're trying to implement. One of the issues we were coming together as a community to discuss is how do we counter the current legislation over in Indonesia, what they're going to export and why. I know that one of the big topics was Indonesia wanted to cut off exporting to India. They also wanted to regulate the particle size coming out of Indonesia to the United States, and that would have affected me. So it's just we're trying to. One of the good things is, for the most part, the kratom companies come together and work hand in hand on a lot of these issues. There's a lot of camaraderie, so we get together, discuss, the state of the union basically, and how we can help each other.
So you don't really like the new export regulations. You're against them.
I don't think they're going to affect me as much as I first thought they were. Now, when it comes to one of the things they're talking about putting on there is a standard tax per kilo. And one of my things is if it affects me by a standard tax, it's going to affect everybody the same way. So that doesn't bother me as much as some of the other selective language they put in the bill. But as far as a tax raising the prices, if that helps raise the level of product and formalize trade between the United States and Indonesia, I'm all for it.
You also do kava as well. That
Yes.
seems, sometimes I wonder, should I have done the kava advocacy podcast? But I miss all the juicy drama. But lately in Utah, there have been products being taken off the shelves that are admixtures of kava and kratom. Can you talk about that? And there are also claims that it might not be safe to mix the two, but I don't think I've ever heard of any adverse events in those products. But can you speak to that?
I mean, kava is an ODI, an old dietary ingredient. It existed long before Duché. It's been used for centuries over in Fiji and the different Pacific islands. I think it has a pretty safe profile. I know that there are rumors that it could have some interactions with your liver if it's abused. I mean, your liver processes everything you consume. But like a lot of these botanicals, if you're using them responsibly and you're not abusing them, I think they're relatively safe. It's just like anything. If you abuse something, it could potentially be unsafe. Uh, you can take too much salt, and that's unsafe. You can drink too much water, and that can kill you. You can drink too much caffeine, and that'll kill you. So, as far as kava and kratom being mixed, that's a very strong selling product category for us. We have a reasonable assumption of safety on that product. We're going to continue marketing and selling that. So as far as I believe recently, Utah just relisted the Kava Kratom products.
Oh,
That's
that's
the
good.
last I heard.
So why were they being taken off in the first place?
I don't know. I know the same rumors you've probably heard, but as far as that, I don't know an exact reason. Apparently, the state of Utah thought it was unsafe.
I wanted to ask you about your future of research. You seem like an ambitious guy. You've got to have like a 5-year, 10-year plan. I don't know. What would you like to, where would you like to see yourself, and how would you like to shape the kratom industry, the kava industry, the legal landscape? How would you like to shape that in the next 5, 10 years?
Well, I would like to see some pretty common sense regulation on a federal level surround kava, kratom, predominantly kratom, and just create legal framework that ensures consumer safety, proper labeling, uh, proper warnings, things of that nature. One thing I would like a little bit more FDA enforcement, just specifically from the position of there's a lot of companies out there that are not GMP compliant. There's a lot of kratom companies out there that are packaging the stuff in their homes or their garage and selling it online. I would like the FDA to come in and eliminate all of that, because I think that's where some of your biggest risks are. People not tracking their products, not testing their products, not making them in a clean, registered facility under GMP compliance. I think that's a huge risk for the kratom community as a whole. And I would like to see more language put into legislation that makes it absolutely impossible for a company like that to operate.
I wanted to know what the association between kratom and the UFC is, MMA fighters. You mentioned maybe having someone on, but and that would have been cool. But I wanted to know, like, why is there that association there? Because I hear about that pretty often.
You're referring to Frank Mir. Frank Mir is our company's brand ambassador. I've known Frank for years. He's a personal friend. He, he's a fighter. He's gone through a lot of abuse on his body throughout the years. He uses kratom daily as part of his, wellness routine. It's one of the things that he likes to do is stay active, and he feels that kratom helps him train better and stay active in the gym. He's in town right now. He was at the event with us last night. I just got a text from him a minute ago. He's still, recovering from the night before. So he will not be joining us today, but he's in Kansas City right now. We're going to take him to the airport here real quick. Yeah, but I do know that there's a lot of UFC fighters out there that are looking at alternative products for just a standard wellness routine. So he's one of them.
Something I forgot to mention, there was recently an agreement between Hart and the American Kratom Association. That agreement seems like it would be cross-aligned with your principles. What will you have to say about that, and what's the significance of this agreement?
Well, the agreement was Hart would no longer market or have their companies, their association, market the product as Kratom. That was the agreement that was made. And when you look at Hart, obviously not having a financial disclosure of Hart and knowing who contributes what, I know that CBD American Shaman is a large contributor of Hart. And the agreement was made that they would no longer market the product as Kratom. And you go into the CBD American Shaman stores, and it says red vein Mitragynine speciosa extract on the 7-hydroxy tablets, or white vein Mitragynine speciosa extract on their Mitragynine pseudodoxyle. So how do you say, even on their packaging, they got big leaves of Kratom on there, and they're basically saying it's Kratom on the scientific side of things, using the Latin name or the scientific name for things instead of using the word Kratom, which I think is a completely disingenuous agreement to make if you're just going to immediately, basically skirt the rules or basically play a gotcha type routine. So, like I said, I wouldn't have a problem with 7-hydroxy on any level if it didn't jeopardize what we're doing on the Kratom side of things.
So compliance seems to be shit. And because it's so shit, and it seems like almost no one ever gets caught. Well, I guess, what does getting caught even really look like? What does it mean if you're caught violating that agreement? And how can we encourage, or failing that, compel people to comply?
Well, I don't know how many 7-hydroxy companies are out there. I would estimate 500-600 at this point, or different brands. As far as who's all producing it, we don't know who the producers are, but there's a lot of different brands. Hart is a nonprofit. Hart has zero ability to force anybody to market their products in any way. I know the American Kratom Association has gone as far to, when they see somebody on the Kratom side of things, if they see a Kratom company making health claims, they'll reach out to that company and send them a letter saying, hey, you're making health claims, stop. And if you don't stop, we'll report you to the FDA. If Hart was genuine about their agreement to not market the product as Kratom and to not make health claims, they would have some sort of transparent enforcement mechanisms that they would hold the 7-hydroxy community accountable to. If you look at, you're seeing right now on my desk at work, there's a vape cartridge of 7-hydroxy mixed with Delta 9 THC.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, so you also see, when last Champs I was at, you saw 7-hydroxy ice cream cones.
7 cones, yes.
Yeah. So if Hart was genuine with their stance on, we're not going to call it Kratom and we're going to try to be the adults in the room, they need to aggressively go after the bad actors in the 7-hydroxy community and hold their feet to the fire. I haven't seen any of that done yet.
I haven't either. Yeah, it's scared. It's kind of, we say that we want to get away from that gas station mentality of Kratom being like a corner store drug. And it seemed like we were getting clear of that, but there are some 7-OH vendors who are kind of dragging Kratom along back down to that beginning. And also, I have it on good authority that a significant amount of 7-OH vendors, small vendors, are purchasing their pills from 1 or 2 suppliers and primarily using them to support their own habits, because it can be bought rather cheaply and sold wholesale and sold rather expensively.
No, based on the numbers I've seen, it's probably one of the most profitable legal drugs. No, I shouldn't say legal. You can make more money selling 7-hydroxy than you can selling black market marijuana. But you're not going to go to prison right now for selling 7-hydroxy. That's why it's so enticing for all these people to get into the business. It's, you're not at risk of going to federal prison or jail for doing it. So, but you said something about, as far as taking the product out of the vape shop or normalizing the Kratom community. We, about a year ago, partnered with a couple stores that were branded as MitWellness, basically a MitWellness franchise, and the stores are doing exceptionally well. And that is our path as MitWellness as the brand. Moving forward, we're going to focus specifically on our franchise model, open up as many brick and mortar stores as we possibly can, either corporate owned or franchise or some sort of hybrid model. We're going to have very well-trained, articulate, clean staff members representing the products, slowing the customers down, properly explaining to the consumer how to use the products, And that is how we're going to continue to bring MitWellness to the market. I don't see MitWellness as a brand being available in smoke shops in the coming years.
All right. And what is one book that has changed your life?
The 21 Indispensable Qualities of a Leader by John C. Maxwell. When you talk about, you asked me earlier, what do I attribute success to? I think strong companies make strong products, and my wife and I, have dedicated our time to creating good, solid leaders within our company, dedicating our time and energy to our staff, making sure they're properly trained, they share our mission, they share our vision, they share our values. And that's kind of the cornerstone in which we built everything on. It was a couple of years ago, it was me and two employees. I had a little $30 desk from IKEA, and I would sit there and formulate the product during the day. They would bottle it. I would make phone calls to potential customers. And that turned into, with a couple of years later, over 100 employees. So we're going to continue doing what we do.
And any news, final words, advocacy events coming up? Anything you want to spotlight before we close the show?
I know we're going to Rhode Island this Thursday and Friday to see what's going on with the American Kratom Association and what's going on in Rhode Island. And we're going to, try to do what we can to do what we feel is right with consumer safety in mind.
Todd, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been a pleasure having you, and I wish you luck in all your endeavors.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Lawrence.
See you.